going to be talking about Ethereum 2.0, and we'll touch on DeFi as well.
Sure. So, Darius, you want to just give us your background?
My background. Let's see. So I am a former engineer. That was my first life, working on radars. That was boring. I switched careers to finance. Spent about 12 years on Wall Street, working at JP Morgan and several large hedge funds in global macro. And just to follow the team, I am recovering global macro risk manager.
And you built a B-12 bomber?
That was my first life, yes.
Yeah.
And then after 12 years, I stumbled onto this little white paper. I got the bug. I joined Consensus, spent there about 3 years doing various things, and I'm deep into DeFi now.
Cool. So today we were tasked with an update on state of affairs of Ethereum, and we're going to bifurcate that into talking about the application layer, staking, the layer 2 economy, and then finally dovetail with the update roadmap for Ethereum 2.0. So first and foremost, we're going to touch the actual application layer. The analogy that I like to give is an analogy of search engines from the legacy internet. 85% of search happens on Google, and then Ask Jeeves and Yahoo and Bing basically compete for the other 15. And there are barometers that one can check to see that pulse of the blockchain ecosystem. And simply put, of the $100 billion of decentralized financial applications, I would say 95% of that is residing on Ethereum. We've got a very similar number with the concept of non-fungible tokens as well. And so, Darius, on the DeFi side, what's making that tick? What's kind of the state of the union? Where are we? Where are we going?
So DeFi is a term that is an umbrella term for financial services that are peer-to-peer, that are performed on the public blockchain, primarily Ethereum, but that's changing. What's happening there is users typically interact with decentralized applications that are tagging smart contracts and execute code. When it comes to current state of the size of DeFi, one of the primary use cases that's probably common for Tony is the stable coins. They're currently at $105 billion. Users can use them, stake them, and earn real yield. The DeFi also has several categories. The other primary use cases are lending and borrowing. You have trading and automated market makers called AMMs, derivatives, leverage, and prediction markets. When it comes to lending, the size of the lending market is there's $19 billion staked in Maker as we speak. There's $12 billion staked in Compound, and $12 billion stake at Aave, which are services where you can stake your assets and borrow against them. When it comes to derivatives trading, you have the DYDX portal, which currently holds $1 billion of assets. Synthetics holds 650 million, and Nexus Mutual, which is an insurance protocol, holds $640 million. DeFi also spans several layer 2 scaling technologies. For example, we see currently $5 billion of total value locked on Polygon, $2.5 billion in Arbitrum. Loopring holds $630 million, and Optimism holds $440 million. I guess I can pause here.
So basically, what we're seeing are instead of an ISDA document, International Swap Dealers Association, prosaic swap agreement, we're seeing our financial instruments turn into if-then-else statements. And talking about these various financial instruments, whether it's lending, hedging, derivatives trading, stocks, bond issuance. We're seeing basically financial instruments being recreated in a decentralized, programmable method. Where Darius continued to elaborate is the layer 2 scaling solutions. So very simply put, the layer 1 Ethereum mainnet is somewhat slower, and it's cost ineffective to transact at this stage on layer 1. And so basically what we can do is we can have these layer 2 scaling solutions, and simply put, if the three of us go to a bar and we hand the bartender, or I hand the bartender my credit card, and I order us a round of drinks and a round of lunch, or a round of appetizers, a round of desserts, we can basically have the opening of the tab on chain and the closing of that tab on chain. And we could have thousands of microtransactions in the middle. And you could imagine a supply chain do this on a daily basis, or a stock market do this on a daily basis. And we're seeing tremendous efficiencies occurring on these layer 2 scaling solutions. One thing we haven't spoken about is the concept of staking. While proof of work has kind of been the paternal, hierarchical way for blockchains to form consensus and to validate data, we're seeing the evolution of basically a 99.9% reduction in energy consumption through a concept of proof of stake, where instead of having hardware, electricity, and real estate to basically produce swaths of data to validate blockchains, we can basically make a deposit and write scripts to do the same work and come to the same types of conclusions about the validity of data, but at 1/100th of the consumption of energy. So right now, Ethereum is on verge of transitioning fully to proof of stake. And right now the consensus layer is working, and then we're going to be adding execution shortly, but just some stats on staking. So there's over 270,000 validators around the world that are basically staking a bond to validate blocks. 270,000. And they have to have 32 Ether in order to do so. That equals about 8.5 million staked Ether, which is 7.5% of the entire network. And that equals about $40 billion. And that $40 billion is generating about a 5% yield. So basically, I'd argue that this is kind of the next generation of fixed income, where anyone in the world can permissionlessly deposit their asset into a bond, act in a benevolent fashion to add value to this network, and then generate this 5% yield. And it's working. You've got 270,000 actors that are currently earning a 5% yield. So with that said, to talk a little bit about kind of the lower level protocol upgrades of Ethereum layer 1. Basically, I think what's been accomplished already that's worth talking about is the consensus layer. So the beacon chain's now a year old, and we've also instituted a light client friendliness. So of that year, we've basically seen proof of stake work efficiently. And now when this merges, we're going to essentially shut off proof of work. But in addition to that, so basically we have at the consensus layer, the beacon chain's launched. And then at the execution layer, Ethereum has implemented what's called an Ethereum Improvement Proposal, EIP 1559, that burns Ether at every transaction. And one of, without getting into religious wars, one of the largest debates in this space surrounded kind of the finality of the total amount of the underlying asset. So for example, Bitcoin has 21 million, and that's a fixed number. And a criticism of Ethereum was that there was the ability to have kind of this inelastic additional supply. And basically, this new upgrade has created a mechanism where at every transaction, Ether is now burnt. So you actually have a stronger demand curve, a stronger reduction in the supply curve of Ether than in the Bitcoin blockchain. So we've got coming up now that yesterday we had the delay. It was a minor, non-contentious fork that pushed the pushed the difficulty bomb for about 6 months for what I think probably the most important upgrade in the history of Ethereum, which is essentially merging the execution and the consensus layer of Ethereum layer 1 to shut off proof of work and to fully rely on proof of stake. Anything you want to add there? Nope. Okay. Then, bear with me. So then, after that, the roadmap is basically a surge, a verge, and a purge, and they'll probably each take a year to what the Ethereum Layer 1 network would consider kind of an end state. So the surge surrounds the concept of sharding the blockchain. So right now, all of the nodes in the blockchain have to form consensus, but in the future, you're going to have shards of the blockchain have to form consensus. So that'll basically increase speed of the blockchain. In addition to that, there's been heavy research in the forms of zero-knowledge cryptography that should be able to implement privacy. So you're going to see a tremendous work on scalability and the implementation of privacy features. Next, we've got the Verge, which basically is working on statelessness of the Ethereum virtual machine, implementing Verkle trees instead of Merkle trees to basically reduce the amount of data in each transaction. So basically compressing data. And then lastly is the Purge, where we basically eliminate historical and technical debt. So basically there's going to be a point where we're just going to take a hash of all of the previous information so we don't have a bloat of all that data from previous. So with that said, that's kind of our global macro, and then the floor is yours.
Yeah, so we're going to open this up for questions in a bit, but I just had one quickly before we go into that. So is there any short-term solutions that you guys have for the insane gas fees that we see on Ethereum?
So I would say that probably the largest short-term solution is transitioning to these layer 2 scaling solutions. You still, because they are primarily, and there are different solutions, you still have to anchor to Ethereum, and I think that makes sense, as Ethereum, I think, is most ideally situated to be this kind of global settlement layer. And then I think there's going to be thousands of different L2s, but basically you just have to do that on-chain transaction to get into the layer 2 and the off-chain transaction, and then everything in the layer 2 should be pennies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so today you can bridge your assets to Optimism or Arbitrum, and most of these DeFi applications that are on layer 1 are available on layer 2. You can perform your transactions on these layer 2s, and the fees are tiny cents, and the latency is in seconds.
All right, so we're going to open this up for questions. Please go up to the front on this microphone.
What is ETH 2.0 and will it launch?
There is no ETH 2.0.
There's what?
There's no ETH 2.0.
So
There's
where did
one
my ETH go? Where did I stake my ETH
Yeah.
at? When do I get my ETH back?
So it's Bitcoin chain. Once the merge happens, then the ETH that you put in the smart contract will be unlocked.
So to that point, that's a valid point that should be discussed.
You told me to put my ETH there.
Yeah. So basically,
There was a disclaimer.
after the merge. So it's
You told me
Yes.
at your dinner table.
So after the merge, which I imagine will be in June, there's going to be withdrawals enabled about a month after that, and then July you can withdraw.
So does Vitalik have my ETH for you?
Beacon Chain does.
Okay. All right. What else? No more questions for ETH guys? Nobody got any questions for ETH boys? I got more questions. How do you feel about layer 2 solutions such as Matic and so on and so forth, and adding additional capacity to both transactional layer as well as the total output?
So I think I think that the layer 2 design space is just starting, and I think that there are going to. I think the layer 2 design space is probably what's going to make the application layer of blockchain usable, because right now it's kind of thorny and it's rough around the edges because we've been using layer 1, and I think that that's actually going to make it usable. Matic isn't really a layer 2. It's a side chain. I think that what's probably the most interesting are these kind of zero knowledge layer 2 scalable solutions that right now are just doing peer-to-peer payments, but as computation improves and they can do kind of EVM compatible arbitrarily complex logic, that will be a huge breakthrough in computer science. And it's being built out now. You can see it with ZK Sync. You can see Optimism is looking at kind of implementing zero knowledge into their VM. So we're knocking on the doorstep of that.
So just and be as honest as you can. Just which of the competing projects out there give you the most heartburn, keep you up at night?
So I don't look at it as kind of a zero sum or a negative sum game. I think they actually all add value. I think that they're all doing novel approaches to kind of this trilemma issue of kind of scalability, privacy, and throughput. So I think it'll be a net positive to the ecosystem. It's kind of interesting though. With that said, the first thing that any of these projects do is they create a bridge to Ethereum. So it basically keeps Ethereum in its hegemonic position, which I still think will continue. I respect the Polkadot project. I respect what Solana's doing, although I consider it relatively centralized, and I think there's kind of these trade-offs of centralization versus throughput that we can kind of debate. And I think it's all this kind of like timeline debate. I think Mir has done great work in sharding early on. I think that the WebAssembly stuff that's on Polkadot and Indefinity is interesting. Darius?
I would maybe mention Terra, where you have Luna and USD, which is getting major traction in Asia.
And then while it's not a layer 1 competitor in the sense, I think it's also to understand and look at kind of adjacent layers in the stack. So for example, the people between IPFS created libp2p, which is now used as a networking or peer-to-peer networking standard. It's in Polkadot, it's in Ethereum, it's in IPFS and Filecoin. So you're seeing kind of these file storage standards that all of the layer 1 smart contracts use. And kind of how do those two verticals of file storage and smart contracts kind of interact with each other? And that's really interesting to me.
I would also add that Ethereum is well known for multiples of things. So we have diversity of clients. Right now we have diversity of L2s and L1s, and we'll have multiple shards in the near future for data.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's a Java implementation of Ethereum, Go, which is Google's language, WASM, Rust. Well, actually, there isn't WASM, or not WASM, but Rust implementation. So basically, for kind of non-redundancy, they've created kind of multiple clients, which I think is important, and we don't see that in other networks. And I think that's going to be one of the strong suits to Ethereum, is that you have kind of multiple clients implementations.
Last question. Are you long on ETH?
I am.
What a shock.
Irresponsibly long.
All right, perfect. Let me give a round of applause for my ETH guys.